Great to see you all this morning. Would you join me in the call of worship, which is printed in your bulletin? I'll read this section that says leader, and I invite you to join in the reading in the section beside the word people. How precious, how fragile, how short is life. The divine brings us into being.
Weaves our lives together.
And ushers us into eternal rest. Blessed are the sacred rhythms of life, and holy are these tasks.
To be alive, to pay attention, to honor living with awe and care.
Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you for bringing us all together this morning. Thank you for the break in the intense heat. I pray that we open our hearts this morning to listen to your word, to hear what you have to say to us through the mouth of our friend Bethany. Lord, open our hearts to worship as we sing this morning and praise you. Amen.
I invite you all to rise in your spirits and stand if you're willing. And join us in singing our gathering hymn number 23, Praise My Soul, the God of Heaven. You may be seated.
Welcome to University Baptist Church. We're a progressive, welcoming, and inclusive community of faith in the heart of the University District, where you and your faith story are welcome. If you're visiting with us, please leave us a bit of information about yourself. You can leave information on the checking in cards, they look like this, which are in the back of your pews. You can drop those cards in the offering plate during our offering time. In your worship order, you also received prayer slips. That's these little white cards right here. If you have a prayer that's on your heart or something you'd like to have prayed for, please include that on the prayer slip. You can drop your prayer slip into the offering plate as well when it comes around. These prayers will be collected and spoken during the prayers of the people. We're glad to have each and every one of you here. May this be a safe place to reflect on what's ultimately important. May this worship space be a place of welcome for you where God's presence is celebrated. Finally, we're going to try a time of greeting. We encourage you to welcome one another in a manner comfortable for all involved, whether that be a smile, a nod, an elbow bump, a handshake, or even a bow. Let us greet one another in peace.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah. We're going to signal them to wrap up. You're going to start once all the way through. Yep. Continue standing and join in singing our hymn of praise number 60, Cantemos al Señor. Let's sing unto the Lord. Let's sing You may be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Reading today from the New International Version, First Psalm 145, 8 through 14. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in love. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. All your works praise you, Lord. Your faithful people extol you. They tell of the glory of your kingdom and speak of your might, so that all people may know of your mighty acts and the glorious splendor of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures through all generations. The Lord is trustworthy in all he promises and the faithful in all he does. The Lord upholds all who fall and lifts up all who are bowed down. Next reading is from Matthew chapter 11, 16 through 19, and Matthew 11, chapter 11, 25 through 30. To what can I compare this generation? They are like children sitting in marketplaces, calling out to each other. We played the pipe for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, he is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is proved right by her deeds. The Father revealed in the Son. At that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned, and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. All things have committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and the burden is light. Thank you.
Come to me, O weary traveler, come to me with your distress. Come to me, O heavy burdened, come to me and find your rest. Come to me and find your rest. Do not fear, my yoke is easy. Do not fear, my burden's light. Do not fear the path before you. Do not run from me in fright. Do not run from me in fright. Take my yoke and leave your troubles. Take my yoke and come with me. Take my yoke
this summer, and David, can you make this a little hotter, please, just for... This summer, we have been working on really concentrating and focusing on 4 of University Baptist Church's values. Those 4 values that we really wanted to embody and embrace became really the framework for how we structured our Sunday morning worship services. Those 4 values that we wanted to wrap ourselves around were congregational community, neighborhood love, spiritual development, and social justice. And so each one of the Sunday themes and preachers really focused or were earmarked and designated in a way toward one of those values. Bethany Davey comes and really embraces and really represents quite a few of those values. From a standpoint of her being our neighbor, she actually attends Columbus Mennonite Church in Clintonville, and is also a friend, lives in Clintonville with her family. Some of her work at the Methodist Theological School of Ohio really centers on environmental and racial justice. And then not only that, but she comes integrating that into a spiritual patchwork and framework that she comes to speak from as part of her own journey in life, as we imagine that God's imagination begins to wed with ours. Bethany is here actually as the second time. She was here in November. Many of you got to meet Bethany. Bethany is a friend of our family. She is also a graduate of Anderson University. Woo-woo, the Ravens. We were the Ravens. And we did not actually cross paths. She's a little younger than I am. I think she came right after I had graduated. But our paths crossed later. We knew professors together, similar students, and we met following graduate school, actually much later when Katie and I had come here after living in Bloomington, Illinois. And Bethany comes, and as I was imagining how to introduce her, there was a word or phrase that came up, and I already shared this with her, but a way that I think really illustrates some of her framework and some of her kind of, living in the world. And that is, it's a Jewish phrase, and it's a toast that is l'chaim. It's a Hebrew phrase. And l'chaim means to life. Bethany really embraces life. She embraces life, whether it's through comedy, through her improv, whether it's through parenting her 3 children, whether it's through partnering, whether it's through theological studies at MTSO. She recently actually just attended Emory University, you all know, down in Atlanta, and will come and share some of her experiences as well about that. So you can tell that I'm excited to hear Bethany. I know it's not just me. We're all very excited to hear you, Bethany. And we do so gladly, and may God's Spirit that speaks to us in and out of days and in and out of moments that we intend and moments we don't intend, we embrace God's Spirit in you here. Thank you.
Pastor Adam, thank you so much for that warm welcome. It's a joy to be back with you all. It really filled my heart joining you all in November. I had such a positive experience, and positive preaching experiences are so important for theological students because then they think, I might do it again. So thank you all for being the kind of space and place and people where I think, not only might I do it again, but yes, I want to do it again. I'll come back. And it makes me braver to preach and to be present in other church spaces as well. So thank you all. And I'm so glad to be with you all here in person today or virtually as well. So I want to begin, as I did in November, by naming my social location as best I am able, because I will be speaking from these aspects of my identity and formation. This information, for me, is important to acknowledge because I am shaped by these pieces of my identity and the ways I experience myself and my communities within and through them. I'm 40 years old. I am racialized as white, with ancestral ties to a variety of European nations. I was born into U.S. citizenship in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a cisgender female which means that the biological sex that I was assigned at birth matches the way that I experience myself. I use she, her pronouns, so if you talk about me, which I encourage you to do, you can use she, her, hers in those conversations. And though I identify as queer, I'm partnered to a white cisgender male. And so this facet of my identity and my experience is not immediately evident. My spouse and I have 3 white biological children, and we live in nearby Clintonville, a neighborhood with significant whiteness and wealth. Currently, our family experiences a middle or upper middle class socioeconomic reality. I'm a graduate student at Methodist Theological School in Ohio, and I'm part of the Columbus Mennonite community, and I'm an improviser at the Nest Theater. All these things and more inform my experiences and perspectives, and as such, I feel an ethical obligation to name them. It is also important to me to name the physical location, the land body on which we find ourselves in our bodies today. I want to acknowledge that through the ongoing violence of colonization, the land that we call Columbus, Ohio, holds histories of genocide, ancestral land seizure, exile, and cultural erasure. These lands are, historically and presently, interconnected with those known as the Hopewell, Adena, Miami, Osage, Delaware, Algonquin, and Iroquois peoples. We acknowledge the histories and present realities of people and land and the ways in which indigenous peoples have always been and continue to be, leading vibrant lives and working toward liberation. May we join in indigenous-led, bodied efforts for truth-telling, reparation, and healing. One local action that I want to highlight is the Native American Indian Center of Central Ohio, or NACO, and their Land Back campaign. This is a bodied, tangible way to engage the collective work of repair, and I invite you to check that out if you feel so moved. I recently returned home after 2 weeks on Emory's campus outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Emory Seminary, Candler School of Theology, hosted this year's Hispanic Summer Program, which gathers Latino, Latina, Latinx, or for the more Spanish-friendly, gender-inclusive, Latine, theological students from around the United States and beyond. It's in its 34th year, and the Hispanic Summer Program centers Latine professors, students, and experiences. If there is space, some of us who do not identify as Latine have the honor of joining. And this summer and last, I was overjoyed to be part of this connecting, invigorating community. Throughout our weeks in the Hispanic Summer Program, we lived together. I roomed with a complete stranger, which I haven't done since my undergraduate studies. We ate together, we studied together, we played together, danced and sang and talked together. The experience was all-encompassing, very bodied, very relational. I came to know people and pieces of their stories. I was allowed glimpses into their communities and selves, and I allowed them into mine. I learned that many of my peers' families hold tender and traumatic migration stories, stories that continue to reverberate through their own bodies and through our communal spaces. It was while in this community that we first heard about 2 nearly concurrent news stories: the implosion of Ocean Gate's submersible and the capsizing of a fishing boat off the coast of Greece, carrying nearly 800 people attempting to emigrate from Pakistan to Europe. Both events are horrific. Both events involve the loss of human life. And yet, the collective response to these events was unexpected. Or perhaps it was exactly as expected, depending upon our perspectives and the amount of honesty and maybe cynicism we allow ourselves. One of my classmates in the Hispanic Summer Program, a young Mexican Master of Divinity student, expressed deep pain at the disparate responses to these tragedies. He found it difficult to reconcile the media coverage and subsequent search for the 5 people lost in the Ocean Gate implosion, while comparable media coverage and search energy was not afforded to the hundreds of people on the capsized Mediterranean ship. Wealth, status, and power once again determined the amount of media attention awarded, the amount of effort extended. News outlets shaped their stories for our consumption, and our perspectives of who and what mattered were shaped as we watched, read, and listened. I noticed my own attention drawn disproportionately toward the plight of the 5 people on the Titan submersible, and I wonder why that might be. Perhaps I prefer to see myself reflected in the tragic occurring out of an adventure gone wrong, rather than in tragedy born out of desperation. In the same way that I see my own human frailty in the face of the unhoused person requesting money at the Weber Road exit off of 71, I see my own human frailty in the mother who risks literally everything as she attempts crossing the choppy waters, the human-imposed borders, with her children. Without the illusion of emotional distance that I catch myself attempting to create, I am forced to ask myself, my goodness, could that not be me? Am I not one tragedy, one crisis, one illness, one divorce, one death away from this reality myself? What would I risk to save my life, the lives of my children, my family, my spouse, my friends, my sense of a future? Even with the societal benefits many of my identity markers offer me, I am so very vulnerable. We are all so very vulnerable. As we spoke together in our call to worship, how precious, how fragile, how short life is, our lives are but a breath. It can be very difficult to gaze into the mirror of our own vulnerability. And so, is it expected or exactly as expected that Ocean Gate looms in our imaginations with such heft? Is it unexpected or exactly as expected that we avert our eyes from those fleeing Pakistani lands in utterly desperate vulnerability? Our responses are both unexpected and disappointingly expected all at once. In today's scripture, Jesus confronts a similar unexpected expected within his communities. As we enter the text, we learn that Jesus' teachings have not been received as he'd hoped or as he'd needed them to be. To illustrate his listeners' unexpected, or perhaps exactly as expected, lack of response to his words, Jesus uses the illustration of children who are thrown off by their playmates' responses. We played your dancing music and you didn't dance. We played a super sad song and you didn't mourn, you didn't cry. Why won't you play like we thought you would? Both John the Baptist and Jesus are also met with unexpected, or perhaps exactly as to be expected, responses to their ways of being in the world. John, in his commitment to fasting, he must be a demon. And Jesus, with the company of those with whom he chooses to eat, he must be a glutton, a drunkard. These responses seem both unexpected and disproportionate to the behaviors of these two men, and yet also quite expected, considering the radical nature of their teaching and their claims. While I fancy myself a person open to revolutionary dissenting voices, I do suspect I would have found these men alarming and dangerous had I thought they threatened all that I held sacred. Jesus goes on to detail larger scale, unexpected, expected responses. In cities where he had performed wondrous miracles, people remained unable or unwilling to believe Jesus' claims. In these places, Jesus anticipated his actions would incite belief, yet instead they were met with disbelief. Unexpected or exactly as expected. The community's responses were unexpected because they did not match the miraculous with which they had been presented, and yet to me, their responses are simultaneously exactly as expected. Jesus' claims threatened people's understandings of both social order and the sacred. Resistance and hesitancy to lean in closer is precisely what I might expect. The final and oft-quoted verses of this chapter provide another unexpected in a metaphor. Jesus' listeners are invited to yoke themselves to him, an act translated into English as easy and light. A yoke was used to control and connect animals to one another to make the transport easier for humans. And yet Jesus uses this common expected metaphor unexpectedly by inviting us to choose this connection to him as a lesser burden, an easing, rather than as a means of control. Quite an unexpected description on the one hand, yet perhaps if we consider the whole of Jesus' life of compassionate justice, this sort of yoke is quite expected indeed. So what are we to make of this jumble of unexpected expected? The unexpected expected, example of children ignoring their playmates' songs of dancing and mourning. The unexpected expected characterizations of John the Baptist and Jesus. The unexpected expected responses of cities rejecting Jesus' claims in spite of his miracles. We can start by considering the unexpected and expected responses and what they meant for Jesus and his communities. For me, this brings up many questions. What are the relationships among these peoples? What is at stake for everyone involved, whether in their belief or disbelief of Jesus? What might it have meant for a Jewish man to challenge the tradition of Judaism within Judaism and not in opposition to it? And as an aside, I want to pause here and just note the danger Euro-white Christianities enact when we position Jesus as anti-Judaism or anti-Jewish. One of my biggest learnings thus far in seminary has involved the ways that Christianities and Christians have fueled and continue to fuel anti-Jewish sentiment and action when we position Jesus as Judaism's foil, as its opposite. I invite all of us to continue examining this current and historic ideology within Christianities because it is incredibly dangerous to our Jewish siblings and perpetuates anti-Semitism. Rather than being anti-Jewish law, Jesus is someone attempting to confront inequity and injustice within his tradition. Jesus' grasp on what is and his imagination for what is not yet invites us into examining the unexpected and expected responses within his communities, within ours today, and within ourselves. If we are unsurprised and even expect that the people Jesus encounters would discount his claims in spite of his miracles, what might an unexpected response be? And furthermore, if we are unsurprised or even expect that the deaths of 5 people of incredible wealth would incite more media coverage and rescue response than the deaths of 300 people and the plight of nearly 800 people attempting to save their lives through a horrific immigration journey, what might an unexpected response be? Our collective unwillingness or inability to recognize our shared human frailty in one another is unsurprising, and yet in our refusal, do we become the playmates who won't dance to the songs of our friends, the fellow children who won't grieve at the very literal sound of a funeral dirge, the city of people who won't acknowledge the miraculous in our midst? In this passage and beyond, Jesus celebrates the unexpected receipt of knowledge of God's knowledge in and through the unexpected places. Not places of power, but places of seeming simplicity. Access is granted to those without access. Imagination is shared with those assumed to be without imagination. What is it to see the divine presence of each human in a sinking fishing boat? What is it to examine our communal complicity in or indifference to the desperate border crossings at the Mediterranean Sea and other human-imposed borders, both locally and abroad? How might we individually and communally be responding exactly as expected, and how might we instead respond in unexpected ways? Jesus invites us to imagine beyond the expected and to respond beyond our usual habitual engagements. May we embrace our human frailty so we might embrace the human frailty in one another, unexpectedly leaning closer when we want to move further away, and trusting all the while that the yoke of Jesus' burden is lighter, a source of profound compassion and life. Amen.
Thank you, Bethany. Ken Watkins, the pastor, interim and associate now, has a phrase that he likes to use, and he says, God's middle name is surprise. I've always loved that there's a surprise that's involved in any encounter with God. So may we embrace those surprises. Thank you so much. I want to take a moment just to outline a few announcements. The first is kind of a personal/private one. An email went out about someone looking for a roommate. Thanks to God and thanks to a lot of folks doing some work, they found a roommate and they're all set up to go on August 1st. I'll send more out, but I just found out yesterday. So that was something we were hoping for, and folks offered to fundraise or to do multiple things. Anyway, so they found a roommate, which is really good. I also want to make mention that my son Owen is here from Laos. He was there for over 2 weeks, actually about 23 days or so in Laos, Bangkok, a little bit of Japan, with the Methodist Church, and had a wonderful time there. And so I'm glad we were praying for you last week, Owen. I also want to mention that this coming Saturday, we're going to have a congregational / Council of Ministry meeting of the minds, where we're going to gather together here starting at 11 a.m. We'd love for you to join us. Please bring your voice, bring your perspective. We're going to outline priorities. Yeah, Joe. Yeah, it does. I'm sorry. Thank you. You're right. But 2 lines above that, it says we'll gather at 11 a.m. But it's okay if you can only come, though. We were planning on doing more of a spiritual kind of focus in that 11 a.m. Some of that's changed, so if you can make it for all. If not, after the 1 o'clock will be the more kind of focused outlining. But some of that even changed. But thank you, Joe. Some of that changed even as since I did these announcements on Wednesday. But if you can come at 11 o'clock, thank you. And we are doing lunch too. Last but not least, if I can, bread retreat. If you can make that, let me know. There are scholarships available, both from UBC and then also from Bread. Is there anything else I'm missing that we should be announcing? Okay. The stream is going on. That's still going well. So if you're not here, summer months are often like kind of, folks are gone, and we want to bless people traveling, experience life l'chaim, But so just know that you can catch UBC's worship service anywhere you're at. It's in HD. The audio streams directly. I know this is but it streams directly so it's not an audio that's picked up from the camera itself, but it's actually fed directly into the camera. So David and I, thank you, David, for doing a lot of work on that. Met with the sound guy here on Thursday nights, on Friday nights, and so it's happening. That was good news. Anyway, so bless us as we continue in worship. We're going to take up our tithes and offerings. Give as you're able, not as you're not. We also want to mention that we'll sing during this. So we'll participate together in a hymn. That hymn number is, let me see here, hymn number 528. It's Give Thanks. And so we'll both sing and give thanks, both with our offerings and with our voices.
Before I begin, did we have any prayers that were collected from? All righty. Any other prayers? All righty. Then would you join me in prayer? Good, gracious, and loving God, in the midst of busy summer schedules, we come before you here in this sanctuary to worship you in song, in prayer, and fellowship with our UBC family. As we get outside to enjoy the great summer weather and your creation, we are mindful that in other parts of the country and around the world, that creation is being devastated by extreme heat, wildfires, floods, and all the effects of climate change. God, help us to be better stewards of your creation and mend our broken planet. We also ask that you continue to be with the people of Ukraine, Sudan, and all those affected by war and gun violence, that they may feel your calming comfort and peace. God, we are also thankful for the choir's successful New York City trip and performance at Carnegie Hall. And we are grateful to have Bethany with us again, and thank you for giving her the words to touch our hearts ahead of the coming week. And finally, God, be with us at the coming planning retreat this Saturday. Fill us with ideas for the future and give us open and discerning minds and hearts to guide our congregation in the coming years. And now hear the prayers of your people here at University Baptist Church. Adam has a prayer thanking the safe return of Owen and thanking God that a roommate was found. For this we say, loving God. And finally, Beth has a prayer for her cousin Matt in Florida, who is in the hospital and just came off a ventilator from severe pneumonia and possible stroke. He has a young family who miss him. For continued healing, we say, loving God. God, for all of these prayers and those that we hold in the silence of our hearts, we ask that you continue to hear our prayer and be with us as we go into the next week. And now we'll join together in one voice, using the words Our Creator, and pray the prayer that your Son taught us. Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Please stand for our hymn of departure, number 566, Be Still My Soul.
If you're able, Bethany has invited us and to offer some feedback. After her sermon, I hope one day, Bethany, I will be as brave as you to ask for feedback as well. I've yet to do that, but I think it's a great idea. So if you can join us, we'll just gather in the sanctuary here in about maybe 5 minutes or so, and be able to share just our thoughts, what resonated, what didn't, maybe what we can offer too. As one of the things I've always been amazed with is the word is truly living. When you preach, it's often, at least from my experience, not so much what I say as much as what God's Spirit is saying to each one of you, which can be very different from what I may have thought. So in that God who both meets us in expected and unexpected ways, may God meet you this week. May God lead you. May God inspire you. May God challenge you. May God love you and embrace you. Amen.